Good morning, friends. We are going to be watching a video by Mrs. McCullough about retelling a story on the Smekens video website.
Hello, this is Mrs. McCullough. We've been learning a lot about your reading voice, the one that reads the word, and also your thinking voice, the one that thinks and talks to you about the passage. Well, today we're going to talk about how the thinking voice continues to talk to you even after you're done reading. Today we're going to talk about how readers retell. There are a couple of things that you need to remember when you're thinking about this type of skill, retelling. When you retell, you have to think through all of the details in the text, and you have to make a couple of decisions. First, you have to decide what's the most important information. What do we even want to include in our retelling? The second thing you're going to think about is putting them in order. What is the correct order for this type of text? Well, today I want to talk to you specifically about retelling when you're reading fiction. And fiction would be any kind of literature. So stories, a lot of the stories that you read or the stories that we've been reading together so far in this series. And so let's think about what would be the most important information in a story. Well, stories are vastly different. Yes, that's true. But I want you to remember that a lot of stories have the same elements. As a matter of fact, all stories have the same elements. Even call them story elements. You might have heard your teacher say that before. And so I want to show you some of the story elements that you've probably been talking about in class, and we're going to include those in our retelling after we've read a text. So the first one I want to talk about here is setting. Now, setting actually has two different facets of it. Setting can be where the story happens. So we've got a picture of a tree and a building. So it could be where. It could be in the ocean. It could be on the moon. It could be in a house. It could be outside. It's where. But there's another element of setting that's really important, and that's time, or when. When did the story take place? Some stories are very deliberate. They'll tell you the day, the year, the time when the story took place. Other stories are just kind of like once upon a time or one day. They don't really give you an exact time. But sometimes it'll say in the morning, at lunchtime, by nightfall. And so that tells us that it happened over the span of a whole day. So setting is an important story element to key into at the beginning of a story, okay? But it's not just setting. We also have to think about who is in this passage, and we call that person the character. And this looks like a boy in this icon, but the character could be a boy or a girl. It could be an animal of some sort that's made to act like a human. It could be a group of people as well, if there's a big group of people who are really involved in this story. Okay, so character or characters would be an important story element. Now, do you see this heart? Well, this heart is tied really closely to character, because usually the character has something that he cares about deeply, or something that she wants to happen. It's something that really motivates her to do something in the story. And so when we are thinking about the most important information that we might share in our retelling, is when or where told to us in the story elements. We want to include it if they are. And then the character, who, I'm sure there's a character, and what does he or she want, okay? So I'm going to place this over here on my chart. But those aren't the only story elements. There are a couple others. Another one that's a really big deal in any story is the problem. let me show you the icon that we have here for the problem. See how it's a flag, like a question mark on it? Yeah, like, what is the problem? That's what I was thinking about when I think about the problem. The problem, kind of like a big flag, like, woo, here's the problem. Woohoo, look out, it's going to be a problem. So that's what I'm always kind of looking out for when I start reading a story. What's this character's problem starting to be about? And here's the thing, it'll usually come up pretty early in the story. Now, there's something else that's really important in a story element, and that is the solution. How was this problem solved? Now, I know I got two other hands over here. Well, let me tell you a little bit about that, okay? You see, sometimes the character himself, he can solve the problem all on his own. See how this icon, he's raising his hand in victory because he's like, yes, finally solved the problem. But sometimes, if this was the character, he can't do it himself. Sometimes he needs help from someone else. And so we call this person the guide or the helper. Was there a guide or a helper that said, well, try it like this, or let me use this magic spell, or whatever it might be? Is there someone else who helped the main character solve his problem? So I'm just going to add that to our anchor chart. So the story elements, we have setting, character and what he wants, we've got the problem, and we've got a solution. Now, I want to talk about the second part of what you need in a retelling. You make sure that you put things in order. Yeah, it has to go in the right order or else it's not going to make sense. And the thing about literature is it's always in chronological order. Chronological order means it happens first, next, last. It's all about the timing of the events. And so that's why these are actually listed in this order on the page. You see, the first box is something that you almost always see early on in the story. And so, model this for you. Let me show you what I'm talking about by going back to our book, A Bad Case of Stripes. Now, if you've not read this book before, you could always pause the video here, and then you could go out to Storyline Online. And there you'll hear Sean Astin read A Bad Case of Stripes to you. The link will be below the video if you'd like to do that. But if you've been with me for a while, you're familiar with this story, okay? And so let's talk about at the very beginning of the story, A Bad Case of Stripes. It tells us some of those story elements. So let's think back to setting as far as where is she on this very first page? Well, she's in her bedroom in the closet getting ready. But you know what? There's another important element here for setting. If we think about the when is it? Well, it could be in the morning. I agree. But you know what? There's something else. It says it was the first day of school. Yeah, that's really an important part of the setting. Her first day of school. It's a big day, right? Big day for kids going to school. And so we can think about the setting and then also the character. The character is introduced to us right here on this very first page. Her name's Milk Cream. She loved lima beans. And so what did she want? What did she want with all of her heart? Well, she wanted to fit in. Yeah, all of her friends hated lima beans and she wanted to fit in. And so that's why she wasn't going to eat them, because she wanted to be like everybody else. Remember that part of the story? Okay, so see, first couple of lines, bam, we've got all those story elements right there because they come in the beginning. Well, let me tell you when you'll find the problem. that flag, it's usually in the first couple of pages too. Some people think, oh, it's in the middle of the story. No, it's early in the story. And so remember, she was trying on 42 outfits. She put on a red dress, looked in the mirror, and then she screamed, and ba-bam, there's the problem. That's the problem. She had a bad case of stripes. Yeah, she did. It was horrible. Now, if I only lived the problem and went straight to the solution, then remember what happened in the solution? She actually had a guide. She had the little woman who came in, and then she gave her some lima beans. And when she was actually able to eat lima beans, which she loved so much, remember we heard that at the beginning, then she turned into herself again. Now, that could be a retelling, but remember this whole notion of the most important information and putting it in order? There's a couple things that I think we need to add, especially now as second and third graders, to really make sure our retelling has enough details. And so here's what I want to show you underneath my sticky notes. You see, sometimes the character has a problem. Woo, she had a bad case of stripes. And then the character tries to fix the problem on his or her own, and it gets worse. You see those storm clouds? Yeah, that's what it means. They tried something, and it didn't work, like the storms of life. Then tried something else, and it didn't work. Well, did that happen to Camilla? You bet your sweet cheeks it did. Remember what happened to Camilla? She started out with the problem, the bad case of stripes. Then, when she went to school, they started saying the pledge. But bam, she turned into a flag right there. And it kept getting worse. Remember that when kids would start saying things, the very next page, she starts turning into all kinds of things. They shouted out, see some purple polka dots, checkerboard, right? All of those different kinds of things kept showing up on her skin like they were changing the channel on the TV. Ugh, poor Camilla. And so she turned into a bad case of stripes. She turned into whatever anybody said. And then after everybody was looking at her, it got even worse because she turned into her house. She's like the walls of the house. There's her eyes and her mouth. So did she have problems getting worse and worse and worse? Yes, she did. So let's think about this for a minute. If we were to do our retelling orally, how would this sound? On the first day of school, Camilla wanted to fit in with all the other kids, but she had a bad case of stripes. Then when she went to school, she turned into whatever anybody said, a flag, a checkerboard. They brought in a lot of doctors to try to help her, but nothing worked. Until finally, she had turned into the walls of her house. But then an old woman came and gave Camilla lima beans to eat, which remember, that's what she loved anyway. And then she turned into her old self again. Yes, right? That's a retelling. Picked out the most important information and we put it in order. Okay, so now I want you to help me out with this, okay? I'm going to go over to Epic. And on Epic, we've been using a lot of their books in these series. And I've just picked a traditional tale, The Three Little Pigs. I know you've heard that at some point in your life, right? And so I want you to help me think about then what would be the most important information and how could we put it in order? So now as we look at the Three Little Pigs, then remember the mother and the three pigs, and she sent them out to make a house. Yeah, so there's the setting, right? They were at their mother's home or something like that. They were just in the meadow. Now, does it really tell us like a time? No, it's kind of like one day. Oh, there was once a mother pig. Like it doesn't give us a time, just during the day. So during the day, then the pigs wanted, what did they want to do? Let's think about it. So he's got straw and he makes a house, right? Okay, so they wanted to make a house. That's what they wanted. So one day, the pigs set off to make their own houses. How's that sound? Is that what you were thinking? Okay, so that all happens in the very beginning. But shortly after the very beginning, there's the problem. And here on this page, we see the problem. What is the problem? What's your thinking voice telling you? What is the problem? Yeah, that wolf wants to come in, doesn't he? He even says, little pig, let me come in. So what happens? Does it get worse? Yeah, the little pig blows down the house of the first pig. Okay, so then the second little pig, he's built his house, and then he wants in. And does it get worse here? What does the wolf do that makes it worse? That's what I was thinking too. He blew down the house of the second pig. Oh my goodness. So now we've got the third pig here, and he was building his house, right, out of bricks. He's a smart one, don't you think? And so then that wolf tries, doesn't he? He tries to blow down the house. Does it work? No, it does not work. Now, is there a guide in this story? Is there someone that comes along and saves the little pigs? Not really. No, there's no magic. There's no other woman that shows up. There's no guide or helper in this story. So sometimes you need it and sometimes you don't. Okay. But then what was the solution? Yeah, the bricks were so strong that the wolf couldn't get in the house. And in this story, he ran back to the forest and nobody ever saw him again. He just gave up. Okay? So let's see if we can put that together in a retelling. One day, the pigs wanted to build their own houses. And they set off to do that. But the wolf showed up and came knocking on the door. Little pig, let me come in. But when they wouldn't let him in, he blew down the house of the first pig made of straw. And he blew down the house of the second pig made of sticks. There's no God. And so then when he got to the third pig's house, bricks, he huffed and puffed and couldn't blow it down. He ran away into the forest. The end, right? That's an example of a retelling. Do we have the most important information? Setting, character, problem, solution? You betcha. Did we put it in the right order? Beginning, early beginning, middle, end? Did we do that? Yeah, we did. And so in reading, you're going to have that thinking voice that's talking to you during the reading. But that thinking voice keeps talking to you after the reading. And so when you have to retell, I want you to think about what story elements are in this fiction story, this piece of literature, and how can I put them in order? And so if you were in Mrs. McCullough's class, then I would have you practice this by going on to Epic and have you trying another traditional tale. So this is the series Cinderella. You can have it
All right, friends, so just as Mrs. McCullough told you, you have the most important information and you're putting it in order. You have setting and character, problem, and then solution, and you may have a guide during the solution. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to complete the storyboard, identify setting, main character, and once, identify the problem, describe the problem getting worse and bigger, and identify a guide, if any, in the solution. You can use any story that you have at home or anything that you have access to on the computer.